Okay, we are live. Going to let it breathe just for a moment while we bring on our Facebook peeps, bring on the Instagram folk, and then get things cooking here on tonight's podcast. And we are just about almost there. Come on now. Good. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and my co-host and partner in crime, Zack Kelberman. He will be Kelberman. I just sounded like my 3-year-old Theo trying to say his ours. Zack Kelberman will be here. I don't know, 10 minutes or so. I didn't want to wait till the bottom of the hour, so I'm just firing off. Hope you're all doing well. Have had a good weekend, or as good as can be hoped with some of the gangster stuff that's been happening across our nation, as the hashtag extraordinaire Papa Bear David McElrath kind of hints at here in his first hashtag. He says, "Good evening, Broncos country, Chad, Zach, and Deacon Scott. Hashtag God bless the USA. 12-5, Buckham ×3, MHH for life, Broncos for life, Bo knows, Knicks for 6, Bo leave." I love it. Yeah. Pretty sketchy last, I don't know, a little more than 24 hours or so. Real tough time for the nation, even for those who maybe politically are on an opposite aisle of former President Trump. Sketchy time. No one wants to see that kind of thing happen. And so God bless America indeed. I think we could all use it, regardless of how this election year shakes out. Hopefully smoother sailing ahead. But today we're here talking about Broncos, and maybe this weekend in particular. I mean, football is always kind of a little bit of an escape, right? Any of the things that we're passionate about, our hobbies, the different things that we do, they escape. Not in the sense that you're trying to escape as if everything in your life requires that you flee, but an escape in the sense that you're allowed to kind of disconnect from some of the cares, some of the concerns and anxieties of everyday life or the situation. And I think football and Broncos fandom is an outlet like that for most of us. I mean, speaking for myself, it definitely is. So hopefully we can be that for each other here tonight. I know for me, it's not just football, it's music, playing the instruments, reading, watching movies. We all have our little escapes. And one of the things I look forward to the most each and every week is escaping into this conversation with you guys, because you guys, really help me with that as far as, keeping a good balance. And I love you guys. You know this. Shouts to everybody in the chat, the early birds like David Yunkin. What's going on, big dog? Hope you're doing well. Mike Edel in the house. What's up, bro? We got Dylan helping us moderate on YouTube. Reminding everybody, don't forget to hit the like button on your way in, and share too. That's another great way to help us out. C. Chang, 2 more weeks till training camp, then preseason. Can't wait. Yeah, the rookies report in, 3 days, the 17th, if memory serves. So that's, let's see, Monday. So that's Wednesday, the rookies report, and you'll have some boots on the ground at what are they calling the new Broncos Park? I got to remember this, man. It's a little bit of a mouthful. I'm just going to call it Broncos Park, but powered by Common Spirit. That's right. That's the part I've still got to get kind of inked into the psyche, the powered by Common Spirit. But I'm just going to call it Broncos Park. Things going to be happening very, very soon. Can't wait. Let's see. On Facebook, we got some peeps checking in like Elias. What's going on, big dog? Good to see you. Yeah, you got the shouts. Eli, Elias, Eli. Isn't Eli like a short for Elias? I don't know. We got KB in the house. What's up, bro? What Broncos player, past or present, would you want as your bodyguard? Whoa, that's apropos. I got to tell you. I'll tell you straight up right now. Derek Wolfe. I would trust that man to hold down the fort. You know what I'm saying? Neutralize any and all threats. Derek Wolfe would be my answer there. But there's some other great options. I mean, the smiling. I don't even want to use the word now, because then with all the talk getting used on YouTube and Facebook, Steve Atwater's famous nickname probably get a shadow bound, or at least this episode. But y'all know what it is. I'm not going solo the whole night. Phil, Zach will be here in a little bit. So good to see you, big dog. Really good to see you. What about you? You saying, KB saying, I'll take Von Miller as his Broncos player, past or present, to serve as his bodyguard. His reaction time is second to none. That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. But what I want is not reaction. I want the positive. I want the action. I want the neutralization before there's cause to react. You know what I'm saying? And I think, if people actually knew how much stuff like that is recognized, identified, diagnosed, neutralized by Secret Service and other forms of both public and private security teams, you'd be surprised. Like, for example, this isn't the first. I mean, this is the one that got the farthest, but this is not the first one that was a threat to the former president. I'm sure the current president has them neutralized on the reg by Secret Service and the long arm of that institution. Mike's saying Gary Zimmerman, perhaps for similar reasons, right? Like just solid and great reaction time. I mean, that's what an offensive lineman does, at least in pass protection. Their job is to react. That's why many of them, maybe not all of them, but many of them speak to their favorite part of playing their position is actually the run blocking, because they get to be the actor. They get to be the one dictating what happens as opposed to trying to react and diagnose. So it's a little bit of a change of pace. But Daniel, what's up on YouTube? Good to see you. We also got the Ronk checking in. What's going on, big dog? Pegged, we're going to talk about Bo Nix. Trust on that. Ronk, hope you're doing well, my friend. Love you. Mile high salute right back at you. Tonight's episode titled around, the big burning questions surrounding the unanswered questions surrounding, of course, Broncos camp. And Uwazurike, 6'6", 320 pounds. He might be a pretty solid deterrent on this squad. But how tall is McGlinchey? Like 6'8"? I want to say something like that. Yeah, just hide behind him. Just make sure you're always standing behind that guy. You're going to be all right. Yeah, and this is true, Mike. We're all Americans. No one wants to see, I think I can speak for at least the vast majority of people in this chat and Americans, and regardless of what your political persuasions are, no one wants to see that. No one wants to see that. Those are dark days. Those are dark days. So we don't want to see that. Lady D jumping in with a very generous super chat early on, saying, and thank you, Deanna. Seriously, love you, appreciate you. Says, evening, Chad. I'm confident Bo Nix will be our QB. DeMarcus Ware and Derek Wolfe have been some of my favorites. Hashtag America, hashtag MHH for life. Love it. Thank you, Deanna. Really appreciate you. DeMarcus Ware wasn't here for too long. Not quite qualifying for Ring of Fame. I mean, John Lynch made it. He was here exactly 4 years. Peyton Manning, obviously. DeMarcus Ware, and that's the floor for Ring of Fame, is 4 years. Aqib Talib qualifies by the skin of his teeth. DeMarcus Ware, not quite. 14, 15, 16. And that was the duration of his playing career. But then, of course, you could make an argument for the four. Like if I was advocating on behalf of DeMarcus Ware for the Ring of Fame, I would include that 1 year he spent as a pass rush consultant on the coaching staff. Now, was he an employee of the Broncos, or was he a private, like truly like a consultant that you're paying on like a 1099? I don't know, but I would use it to assert his qualification for the Ring of Fame, or at least as enough of a wrinkle to serve as the exception. Because do you win Super Bowl 50 without DeMarcus Ware? I mean, obviously you don't win it without Vaughn, right? But does Vaughn become that Vaughn without DeMarcus Ware, to say nothing of DeMarcus's actual impact in that season in particular, that playoff run, and then, of course, Super Bowl 50 itself, where, if memory serves, 2 sacks, I want to say. But without big bro DeMarcus Ware coming in, I mean, Von Miller, let's not forget how dicey things got 2013, the year prior, the year before Ware arrived, right? He had the suspension, 6 games, for violating the NFL's drug policy and all that stuff, trying to beat the system and game the tests and all that. Not looking good for his outlook. Then he suffers a torn ACL, and you're like, man, is this dude, because he had broken out the year before. Obviously, great rookie year, Pro Bowl, rookie team, defensive rookie of the year, all that stuff, honors, etc. Good rookie year, but 12, man, broke out career high with his sacks, 18, sets the new franchise record, single season, all that stuff, and then massive step backward in year 3. You don't know what he's going to be. If DeMarcus Ware doesn't show up and give him some leadership and some kind of big bro guidance, I don't think Von Miller becomes the player that has the sand to do what he did and be that tip of the spear for the Broncos. So, yeah, DeMarcus Ware, an indelible mark left on Denver Broncos canon. That's why I'm saying, hey, it's okay. Go ahead and find an exception to make him a member of the Broncos Ring of Fame. String Guy, what's good, bro? Any news on Courtland Sutton? No news per se other than, yeah, thank you, Scott, confirming 2 sacks. Led the team to DeMarcus in Super Bowl 50, 4 QB hits. Indeed. Also, critical in the AFC title game when the Patriots inexplicably managed to drive down and get that touchdown. Remember Gronk over Chris Harris Jr. and that insane 4th down conversion a few plays prior, time running out. Inexplicably, they get the touchdown. Ware is utterly gassed, runs off the field when they see, obviously, they're going for 2 like they had to. He's like, nah, goes charging back, helps flush Brady out, falls into Roby's hands, end of game. Like we're going to the Super Bowl. Again, DeMarcus Ware. Plus, individual accolades while he was a Bronco. I think 2 Pro Bowls. I think two Pro Bowls while he was a Bronco. I got to double check that real quick, though. I might be tripping. I know 1 for sure. So it's Pro Bowls 14 and 15. Yeah. So 2 Pro Bowls. No all pro nods, but that's okay. Those Pro Bowls and yeah, two. So anyway, we got the Duchess jumping in. String Guy, I'll come back to you on Sutton. Trust that we've got the Duchess, Michaela Parker. We got the ladies of MHH leading the way here. She's jumping in also with a very generous super chat to get things rolling tonight. Zach should be here within a few moments, a couple minutes. In fact, before I read the Duchess's super, let me just double check because I know he was saying he'll text me if there's any setbacks. So far, so good. She says, does Michaela, shout out to my homegirl, Deanna. I have a good feeling about the path the Broncos are headed towards MHH forever. I love it. I do too. And thank you so much, Michaela. Thank you so much, Deanna. One of the things that gives me a lot of confidence about the direction the Broncos are heading is, we lived through those mystifying years of the old regime. And look, I'm the first guy who's going to stand up and say, give John Elway the credit where he is due for that 5-year reign, right? You had the 1 year with Tebow, you win a division championship. Then 4 years straight beyond that, you win it with Peyton. You go to 2 more Super Bowls where you win 1. John Elway deserves all the credit in the world for that. I don't take anything away from him in the sense that, he had it easy because he had Peyton Manning. Well, you had to get Peyton Manning here. And Elway was the guy that figured out how to do that in the face of some pretty serious league-wide competition. But in the same sense that you're going to give Elway the credit for that, and deservingly so, you also got to give him the criticism for what ensued post Super Bowl 50. And it's a long-winded way of coming back to saying what gives me confidence about the way this thing is headed is that old regime. How many times, guys, we'd go into a training camp and you'd be like, another open competition, and all it'd shake out exactly the opposite of the way it probably should have for the best interest of the team long term. And you're scratching your head, and then you'd hear platitudes from Elway or Vance Joseph or later Vic Fangio. We're doing what we think gives us the best chance to win and all that stuff. And you're going, wait a minute, man, why is the view internally so counter to what it seems so obvious from the outside looking in? Well, Sean Payton, hey, he's shown some intestinal fortitude to make some tough decisions and unpopular, but then in the fullness of time, they end up, in my opinion, they will anyway, end up being the right decision. I mean, just the fact that he benched Russ, and look, I'm the first one to say when it happened, I was like, well, hey, I kind of fell off the Russ train after week 5 anyway, but you probably could have saved yourself a lot of PR blowback by just waiting until the end of the season to do that. But he wanted to see what Stidham could do, right? And so Russ had to sit for 2 games. But then you have the gumption to rip that Band-Aid off, releasing Russell Wilson in the face of an $85 million dead cap hit spread over these 2 years. That took some sand, dude. And then after that, I was like, hey, old regime, even if you had the sand to make that decision, old regime would have been like, we're taking a corner because, we couldn't move up and get Caleb Williams, so we're going to get a corner or an edge rusher. And then you're going into the 2024 season with Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson, and that's like your best hope. Talk about apathy. You think the apathy's bad now, but no, Sean Payton and George Payton, they've made the tough but necessary decisions, and I think that's going to pay dividends in the final analysis. The Dutch is jumping in again to say, I am optimistic because this offseason I'm getting a totally different vibe. Sean Payton, he kind of came in, he talked a little bit about this year one, pissing on trees, in other words, like marking his territory. And he's kind of learns from some of that, the good and the bad, this and that. This year with the Russ, he exercised that demon. He walked around, always smiles on his face. Any pictures you saw of him out on the grass, always like either a full-blown smile or the hint of a grin. He talked about at the podium multiple times during the offseason that there is, to Michaela's point, just a different energy and a different vibe, positive, a good one. Great implications for the Broncos. But you get back to the big burning questions entering camp, and that's the quarterback competition. And basically, how soon can and will Bo Nix take command? That's the first thing. And regardless of what your opinion is on Bo Nix, vis-a-vis, did they reach, should he have been a second-round pick, all that stuff, regardless, the toothpaste is out of the tube. He was a first-round pick. The Broncos took him at 12. So that being the case, hey, man, if this wasn't a 24-year-old quarterback, most experienced guy ever to enter the league through the NFL draft, combined and on the heels of 8 years of playoff irrelevance, the calculus might be slightly different. But that's not the situation, right? We're living through, going into the 9th season, if they don't show some signs of life this year, of missing the playoffs. And this dude's 24, so clock's ticking. Get him on the field. It'd be one thing going back to Sean Payton, right? Like when he talked about, hey, coach, what are the conditions typically for you to feel good about starting a rookie? This was before the draft. He's like, well, typically, if you've got a, might have been actually, no, it's before the draft. If you've got a proven guy, then you can afford to kind of wait on playing the rookie. And he used the 2 Green Bay situations dating back to 2008 as his examples. Well, there's no quarterback on this roster predating Bo Nix arriving that even came close to approximating Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love, right? And so that, therefore, ergo, you got to play Nix sooner than later. So the longer you him and haw on that, and I get it, you got to kind of balance between your desire to see Bo Nix on the field if you're Sean Payton, your desire to get to the new era, the guy you handpicked. You got to balance that with the demands of kind of placating the locker room. You can't have the appearance of just handing it to Bo Nix. So this competition is going to continue, but the sooner that he just goes, no, this is our guy, here's our starter, the better. You get the reps. It's for the skill guys, get that chemistry going. The offensive line guys, make life easy on them. They can start figuring out where guys are going to be on different drops and, gelling around the quarterback. And then, of course, just getting that coach quarterback extension of the coach on the field thing going sooner than later. Taylor, what's up, big dog? Thank you for the super. He says, hey, Chad, can training camp be here already? Plus, I can't wait to see Bo with the number ones and the rest of the rookies. Hopefully, Javonte Williams is back. MHH for life. I'm not sleeping on Pookie. Like, I understand that because of his history and just even though he came back early last year from his injury, it didn't look quite the same, lacked that explosiveness, pretty kind of vanilla, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I'm not sleeping on that dude. And I went back and watched the clips. You can find it on our website, in fact, and on the channel I was just writing about this yesterday or the day before, his answers. He's not the most location, he's not verbose. When you ask him a question from the time he was drafted, Pookie keeps it relatively brief. But every other question he'd give you 2, 3, 4 sentences in his answer. The two questions that got posed to Pookie on the subject of, hey, do you take it as a shot across the bow? The Broncos brought in new guys. They drafted Audric Estime. Or, hey, do you think you're going to make the roster? He kept it one word. Hey, I'm just going to do my job. Next question. Going to do my job. Kept it very short. And I read into that, man. I read into that because I'm telling you, that dude is motivated. Contract year. People are doubting him. Broncos hedging their bets by bringing in Estime and then also bringing in Blake Watson. I mean, they're going to bring guys in through the undrafted ranks every year. That's a given. But bringing in a running back in the 5th round, using a draft pick on a guy who basically checks 98% of the same boxes that you do, that's a definite shot across the bow. That's a team telegraphing to you, hey, we're not necessarily expecting you to come out and crush it this year and earn a second contract. So we're drafting your potential replacement. Doesn't mean we're opposed to it happening, but we're getting ready. That's a shot across the bow. And it just so happens that it lines up with his contract year. And we know the phenomena that can take place for players in a contract year. So that gives me some confidence. Mike Edel, what's up, bro? Saying, hey, Chad, I'm with Michaela. Things feel a lot different. Go Broncos. Yeah, bro. It does feel different, and I'm here for that. Eric Flynn throwing down on Facebook. Good to see you tonight, my friend. Hope you're doing well. Really appreciate the support to our Facebook peeps like Eric. Then we've also got a number 2 massive super chat here from the Lady D. Thank you so much, Deanna. Love you. You know this. Hopefully we'll get to see you at one of the meet and greets sooner than later, maybe this year. I don't think I've heard if you're able to make it this year or not. September 15th, Broncos Steelers, going to be a gas. She says, do you think Courtland Sutton will stay with Denver, and will they pay him too? I can see it going both ways. Michaela is right. There is a different vibe this year. Go Broncos, MHH for life. Yeah, I mean, part of that vibe too is like Russell Wilson, despite all the excitement from acquiring him initially, right? He brought in, I mean, the way the media treated him, and albeit he did some goofy stuff that kind of invited a lot of the way he was treated, but still, that created a weird vibe. That put the Broncos in a little bit of a weird situation. Just some of the cornball, goofball stuff he did and said, that creates an energy. That creates a vibe. So when you exercise that demon, you get that out of town, man, all of a sudden it's like, okay, we now kind of have the room, the headroom to do our thing and be ourselves. And it's not this cloud of like washed quarterback National Lampoon thing that had kind of persisted throughout Broncos HQ for 2 years. So on the Sutton subject, look, I kind of trailed off when I was trying to answer that earlier, but the last thing we heard is, was it NFL.com? I think it was NFL.com. Sometimes this late in the offseason, guys, I start getting a little cross-eyed trying to remember which national site aggregated a piece of news, but wasn't exactly news. It was just further confirmation that Courtland Sutton has not, quote, ruled out a holdout from training camp. So, the first thing to keep in mind on this, Deanna, is that he is under contract this year and he is under contract next year. So he's got 2 years left on his deal, counting this season. He's asking for about $3 million more per year by way of a raise. And I think you could even, if you're the Broncos, you could even actually maybe give him half of that in a raise as long as you guaranteed more of his contract. What's left? His contract, I think it's a $13 million salary off the top of my head this year, something like $2 million of it guaranteed. So give him some assurances, show him some love that way. But at the end of the day, I mean, $3 million additional, just give it to him, make him happy. You're going to go with Bo Nix sooner than later anyway. You want him to have at least one just stud guy on the outside, and that's Courtland Sutton. I do believe that will get handled, if not before training camp, early onset of training camp. And, unfortunately, it's the only leverage veterans have in the league is their presence. You want me to show up, then come to the negotiating table. If I'm unhappy, you're going to have to come to the negotiating table. And with the NFL, all things like this are dictated by deadlines, when the rubber meets the road. And for the Broncos, that is July 26th. So if he's not there, first of all, if he doesn't report on July 23rd, the holdout has begun. That's mandatory. Report on the 23rd. So if he does that for the veterans, so if he's not there, it's begun. And then if that stretches into a couple of days of the actual practice on the grass, I think it'll happen early. But in the event that it doesn't, like, why wouldn't you pay Courtland Sutton if you're the Broncos? Like, if you see him for what he is, which, he's still under 30. He's coming off a season in a low-volume passing offense where he scored 10 touchdowns and was a big reason you had what success you did have in the middle of the season. Why not just pay him? You want to start over again at wide receiver. Hey, I get it. You hedged a little by bringing in Troy Franklin and Devon Vele in the 7th round, but those guys they're not ready. So why wouldn't you pay him? Just give him what he's asking for. If you tried to trade him, I don't see the Broncos getting more than a 4th round pick. And so I still think even a Courtland Sutton, who's given a $2.5-3 million raise, is worth more to this team than a future 4th round pick. So for whatever that's worth. Yeah, talking about, I hear you on that, Scott. Sorry, I just barely saw that. All right, let me see where we're at. We're at, if Zach's going to show, it's going to be any minute, dude. And if not, we might miss him. Oh, he's saying he's firing up. He'll be on any second. So, let me see here. Mike, who needs to step up on offense and defense? One player from each. Man, there's a lot of different directions you could go. Player who I think needs to step up on offense has an asterisk, so I'm not going to use Greg Dulcich. I'll go to the next guy, and that's Marvin Mims. Now, Marvin Mims, though, you could say, he needs the coaches to not hold him back and allow him. Well, part of that, he can control that, showing that he's present. He's doing his homework on the offense, on his responsibilities, working on his game as a receiver, his technique, his route running. And then on the practice field, no loosey-goosiness with the ball. I mean, that's what got him in the doghouse in the first place, involved in 2 lost fumble plays, week 5 against the Jets. But he's the guy needs to step up, and this is outside of the quarterbacks, obviously. Like, even if they end up starting Jarrett Stidham, out of the gates, you need your quarterback to step up. But it'll be Bo Nix. So this is not counting quarterbacks, but I would say Marvin Mims. On defense, I'm going to say this one's even more ripe for opportunity here on who needs to step up. But Baron Browning, dude, or one of the edge rushers need to step up. And I think it's going to be Baron Browning in the final analysis, because all that dude needs is a little luck by way of the injury bug. And he's a 10-sack guy. So I'm going to say Baron Browning. But Mike's answers are Mike McGlinchey and Zach Allen, which are 2 great options. Zach Allen kind of started, I don't want to say he started slow, but he finished really, really strong. So whatever you want to say about how his season started, he ended up finishing the season down the stretch from about the time they started winning ball games on. He was really, really strong. So I'll give him that. Who is the bigger free agent signing, DeMarcus Ware or Neil Smith? Man, that's actually a really tough question, KB, and you know this, so appreciate you serving it over to me. But what came of it? One guy helped contribute to 2 world championships. The other guy won. So I got to err on the side of Neil Smith, but I think in terms of measuring the impact that player had, not only what he produced himself and how that affected the Broncos, but then also the intangible influence he had on those around him, it's easily DeMarcus Ware. Like Neil Smith, great leader and all that. But not on the level in terms of touching and influence everybody else on all the different levels of the defense as DeMarcus Ware. But that's still a tough one, man. And if you were to say to me, Neil Smith, I'm not going to debate you on it. Like, or if you were to say, DeMarcus Ware, hey, that's one of those that doesn't really, in my opinion, have a wrong answer. This is true too, KB, on old regime. Had the chance for Kyle Shanahan. And when we're talking about the old regime, we got to make sure we're including the former president, Joe Ellis, CEO, etc. He was the big reason the Shanahan thing never happened in 2017 and why they went with Vance Joseph, much to the chagrin of all of Broncos country. Todd, what's up, bro? Can you see Blake Watson carving out a niche a nice niche in a rotation, or will there be less of a running back by committee focus? I could see him making the roster, but I guess some of that has to do, Todd, with whether or not Estime is actually healthy and available for the season. The team said that he's going to be starting with training camp, but we'll find that out here pretty soon. Otherwise, even if he makes the roster, you're behind Pookie. I'm just going to make some assumptions here. I'm going to say, here comes Zach. I'm going to say, because of it's practice squad. I'm going to say they keep 3 guys. So let's say one of those incumbents from last year is handed their walking papers. And right now, if I had to bet on it, I'd bet a cup of coffee. That's it. Samaje Perine's probably that guy. Let's ask Zach, what's up, dude? As he gets his camera focused in. But Todd's saying here, hey, can you see Blake Watson carving out a niche in the rotation, or will there be less of a RB by committee approach?
So glad to join you guys as always. I appreciate you guys, toiling until I get here. I definitely think, and thank you, Chad, for kind of vamping, but I definitely think Blake Watson could be a part of the rotation. If anything, as Sean Payton did in New Orleans, Chad, he used the gadget type of running backs, the joker types of running backs in those roles. So just as we saw with Jaleel McLaughlin, for example, he might not be a 200 carry guy or a 1,000-yard guy, but when you come in on third down looking to catch a pass or keep the defense off balance, that's your man. That's the battle to me, though, Chad, is do you need 2 of the same player? Because McLaughlin proved that he can do what Watson can, but maybe they have bigger plans for the passing offense with Bo Nix.
Well said. We shall see, man. It's going to be, when we talk about the burning questions of Broncos camp this year, running back's one of the top 2 or 3, like what's going to happen there. And it's not just a matter of, hey, who makes the roster, but like you can, there's multiple levels of analysis. Like I'm less on board with this as a school of thought, but it's out there. It's in the ethos. Like, hey, is Javonte even going to make this roster? He was asked that a month or so back. He was asked that. Hey, you worried about your spot on the roster? He's like, I'm just going to do my job. Next question, basically. But there's that particular trope relative to running backs. There's the Samaje Perine thing, because now you have 3 kind of big power backs, and one of them is kind of expensive. But one thing Perine Zach brings to the table that maybe some of them, not all of them do, I should say, including Williams, is he's really good at everything. Is he great at any one thing? Not necessarily, but like he's handy to have on third down, dude, whether he's catching passes or pass blocking.
Yeah, so some of these players, like we talked with Courtland Sutton, they're better on the roster than off the roster. They offer more value. And I don't know that Javonte's job security is just independent or exclusive to Javonte. I think that goes for any player on the team, Chad. It's going to be an evaluation year, and the older players are the ones who couldn't perform, or the highly paid players. Look at Jerry Jeudy. Couldn't perform, they got rid of him. Justin Simmons, he wasn't performing at the level of his salary tag, and they got rid of him. That's what Sean Payton is, I think, bringing to 2024, is you either show up and do the job that we want you to do, or we will find someone younger, cheaper, and more explosive, in this case Blake Watson, to do it instead.
Let's talk about what some of your big questions are. What are some of the big burning questions for you on heading into Broncos camp before we grab Phil?
Obviously, I'm not sure what you said. I'm assuming we share a school of thought here, Chad. Quarterback, number 1 quarterback is, what do they do with quarterback? Is it Bo Nix off the bat? When do they give him the starting nod? Who's going to be the backup? What are they doing with Zach Wilson? That's number 1, starts there. Number 2, some of the other starting positions. Who's going to be Bo Nix's center? Will it be Alex Forsyth? Will it be Wattenberg or Mustafer? We don't know that yet. Who's going to step up in the receiving core? Is it going to be Tim Patrick as the number 3 receiver? Is it Reynolds? Who among the lessers, the Brandon Johnsons, the little Jordan Humphreys, who's going to step up from there? Tight end. There's a lot of burning questions here, Chad, and I talked about this on Thursday's pod. It's less of a worry to me and more of just an anxious, wondering what's going to develop from that. But tight end for sure. Who's the starter there? We don't know.
True. Phil, hey guys, does Watson become a special teams guy? So is that Blake Watson's path to the roster, Zach?
It's a lot of players' path to the roster. We talk about a guy like Jonas Griffith, for example, the bottom of the roster types. If in order to make their bones and make the 53, they're going to have to pull double duty. Absolutely. It's huge to Sean Payton that you can play special teams. He brings it up, Chad, in almost every answer when it comes to a player's roster odds. Absolutely, he'll have to carve out a role there. But if you bring him in on offense and he breaks off an 80-yard game, similar to Phillip Lindsay when he made his mark, Chad, you just can't keep him off the field. He's too explosive.
True. One thing, it's not always the best predictor, but when you look at some of the signing bonuses and whatnot that the undrafted rookies get, like you look at Blake Watson. Let me see. Hold on. Here it is. So Blake Watson, that's not where he mentions it. Let me come back here. One sec. $25,000 signing bonus. Hold on. Oh, man. I'll find it again, but maybe this is it. Hold on, stand by. Yeah, 25. Yeah, this was back, Zach, the reporting from 9 News, Mike Kliss.
Yeah.
Broncos gave Watson a $25,000 signing bonus and a $255K salary guarantee. So total guarantees $275K. That's about tops for the undrafted rookies this year. So that shows you how they feel about him. Now, is that a guarantee he makes the roster? No, because they do have an interesting logjam of guys. And, you've got the two different kind of camps, Zach. You've got the shiftier, change of pace, twitch guys, which include Watson, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Tyler Beatty. And then kind of the more power grinder guys like Javonte, P. Ryan, and now Audric Estime. So it'll be interesting to see, but that does dictate some of the arithmetic when these guys are making their decisions, at the end of August.
Yeah, I mean, there's questions within questions. There's questions on a macro level at running back, and then on a micro level, will the power back be Estime or Javonte? Will the speed back be McLaughlin or Blake Watson? There's a lot of burning questions to answer, but they sometimes show their intentions, Chad. And similar to when they signed the UFL edge, Dondre Tillman, a 3-year deal. It wasn't a 1-year deal. They obviously have future plans for him, and I think Blake Watson could be the same. One more note, I was scrolling through the supers. I just want to give a quick thank you to Michaela and Deanna and all who have contributed so far. Thank you so much for your generosity. I always want to shout it out.
Indeed. And String Guy, budgeting just shy of $300K on a college free agent running back in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, it's chump change, but it does factor into the arithmetic. Now, it's not going to be the deciding factor if the dude is a complete letdown. Like if he totally fails to launch and doesn't show anything in training camp or preseason, that won't be enough to save him. But if he's treading in there, Zach, with guys like Beatty, or he maybe flashes even a bit more than a Jaleel, those kind of decisions then come into play. Well, we are $300K into this guy. Maybe we'll put Jaleel on the practice squad and keep him on the roster. Things like that. It comes into play. Lady D jumping in
Thank
again.
You, Deanna.
Her third top rope super chat of the night. Hats off to you. We love you, Deanna. She says, happy to see you made it, Zach.
Thank you.
Where in the O-line do you think we need the most help? Looking forward to the season starting. MHH for life. Love you, Lady D.
Thank you so much, Deanna. I think the obvious answer here is center. I mean, we talked about that earlier. Every other position is pretty much set in stone. McGlinchey at right tackle. The guards are set. Bowles at left tackle looking like he's staying there. It's all comes down to is who's hiking the ball to Bo Nix. Will it be Alex Forsyth or Wattenberg or Mustafa? I think it will be Forsyth, Deanna, and Chad, and they'll just keep the continuity alive. And they obviously have an investment and plans for him because he's a Sean Payton draft pick.
Indeed. Just real quick, Scott's jumping in on our private chat to say Blake Watson got 5 times more guaranteed money than Jaleel McLaughlin. So as undrafted rookies, right, is what you're saying, Scott, to sign, to come play, which is interesting because, pardon me, McLaughlin left the college ranks technically as the NCAA all-time leading rusher. Like that dude had some bona fides, Yeah. Watson had some, pardon me, frog in my throat. Watson had some flowers of his own, but that is interesting, Zach.
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I talked about earlier Sean Payton liking gadget players from his time in New Orleans. The ultimate gadget player was Darren Sproles at running back, Chad, and I'm assuming that between McLaughlin and Blake Watson, he's trying to find the next Darren Sproles, and whoever emerges and looks the most like him will get that coveted electrifying scat back slot. But regardless, they need more explosion on offense. I mentioned Phillip Lindsay. How many other players except for Phillip Lindsay could take the ball, Chad, at any point of the field and turn it into a touchdown? They have lacked that for way too long on offense.
That's true, man. Those 2 years with Phillip, dude, were awesome. I mean, the second one was a little bit more of a grind because the Broncos literally had nothing else offensively. Teams were just able to stack the line of scrimmage. And then year 3, Zach, they kind of complicate things and bring in Melvin Gordon on a high dollar deal. And you got a kind of a upset and distracted Phillip Lindsay, and the rest is history. But I'll always wonder what could have been if they just committed to Phillip. But at the end of the day, the NFL, Zach, kind of answered that question. I get it. He didn't have staying power. Like even CJ, what was he, 2013 undrafted rookie off the top of my head. What was his last year, Zach? Something like in the NFL, right? Leaves Denver. Was it 19 his last year?
Something like that, or 20.
So semi-similar. Lindsay's shelf life a little bit less, but maybe a little closer than I'm thinking. I'm going to have to double check that.
Those 2 years were exciting, though, and it's about par for the course for a running back nowadays. If you could squeeze a couple productive seasons, then you got a dub there. And that's why I think whether it's McLaughlin or Watson, that's what Sean Payton's trying to do.
So Lindsay, as far as the NFL, he did play for the Seattle Sea Dragons this past, 2023. As far as the league, 2018 through 2022, whereas CJ, just so we have it, 2013 through 19. So
right.
a few more years, couple 2 more years or whatever, something like that. But Deanna, love you, appreciate you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, Phil saying what's up, love it. Tucson Phil in the house. Okay. We're about 41 minutes in. We're coming up against the top of the hour. We got a few minutes left to go here, guys. So any burning questions, get them in the chat. We'll do our best to get to them before we dip on out. Osbaldo, he's stoked when we're talking about offensive line like Deanna was. He's stoked about this Frank Crum cat who, there is a lot to be kind of intrigued by this dude. But, 6'8", something ridiculous. I mean, he's a mountain of a guy. But the guys who are studying the draft and actually watching all that film, guys like Eric Trickle, for example, they see that upside. They recognize there's some potential there. There's a ceiling that's a good ways up, but he's got a long way to go. He's very raw from a technical refinement perspective, Zach. So if Zach Strief can get in there and start molding him early, maybe there's something there. But the guy the Broncos were actually really excited about was Palczewski, Alex Palczewski. He's right now leader in the clubhouse for the swing tackle, but he'll have to compete, obviously, sing for his supper. Matt Pert, the new free agent from the Giants, he's the big threat there.
Yeah, and similar to my views on Watson and McLaughlin, whoever of the two between Palczewski and Frank Crum develops into that long-term swing tackle, Sean Payton would go with. And I can't say I'm rooting against him. The Broncos have needed some young offensive linemen in the pipeline for years now, and they're going to need, Chad, a plan B because Garrett Bowles is not getting any younger, not getting any cheaper, and I don't think getting any more effective. This is probably going to be Garrett Bowles' last season as the Broncos left tackle, and they have to start planning for the future. It's just hard to do that when you haven't drafted a tackle since Garrett Bowles. Kind of complicates things.
Speaking of complications, Peter Johnson on Facebook, we were talking about Courtland Sutton, Zach, not long before you joined. And Peter says he just wants more guaranteed money. He doesn't want a lot more added. So if its salary is $13 million this year, 15, 16, that's not that much more, he's saying. It's ridiculous. And if the Broncos are penny pinching now, imagine what's going to happen when Quinn Miners walks in to start talking about money. Pay the good player, simple. And you have some good points there, my dog. But you can't, at the risk of sounding like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth here, you can't, yes, they can do their salary cap voodoo can be conjured, okay? But you got to remember the Broncos had to make some tough decisions and kind of go without, get skinny as a result of that albatross of a contract of Russell Wilson. Yes, they currently have about $7.5 million, Zach, in salary cap space, but you got to budget a little bit of that for some Evan Mathis money etc. Quinn Miners. I mean, think of the key players right now, Zach, entering a contract year. Quinn Miners, Pookie, we already mentioned. Sutton's not in a contract year. He's got 2 more to go, but Garrett Bowles. And then here in the next couple of years, you got to pay Pat Surtain. So some big decisions. But your thoughts for Peter here on the subject of, hey, man, if they're going to be that penny pinching, what's going to happen when Miners needs to get paid? Going back to the pay the good players thing.
Yeah, I get the point, and I've said the same. At some point, the Broncos have to show goodwill and good faith toward their own homegrown guys and just show the locker room they're willing to pony up when necessary. But here's where I kind of divert. If Quinn Miners goes to the negotiating table, he's going to do so as a top 5 player at his position because he's demonstrated that. Courtland Sutton is not going to the negotiating table as a top 5 player or even a top 10 player at his position. So I understand the point overall you're trying to make when it comes to the Broncos salary cap, but negotiating wise, Quinn Miners is a better guard than Courtland Sutton is a wide receiver. So Quinn Miners actually deserves what I think he's going to ask for. And you can argue that Courtland Sutton doesn't really deserve any more money than he's already made. You're muted.
One last thing I want to grab here before we dip that's a little bit earlier in our conversation. We were talking about, I think it was KB posed the question about who is more important to the Broncos, the one signing relative to Super Bowls, Neil Smith back in the 90s, which was a huge defection because we scooped him from the Chiefs. He was like lifelong Bronco hater, or DeMarcus Ware. So in the same vein of that conversation, he's saying, does Eric Smith on Facebook, I was always disappointed that we didn't get the Dumervil-Miller combination. Always thought that would have been lethal. And I agree with you. And I think, you got the arguably, the football gods obliged you, or the football fates, whatever you want to call it. And DeMarcus Ware probably would have had a higher net positive impact on Von Miller because Von literally grew up as a DeMarcus Ware fan, Dallas Cowboys fan. Like that's the dude, posters on his wall, right? So it's huge emotional gravity. Anything Ware said, it really meant something to Vaughn. Not to say it didn't Dumervil. Dumervil was his big bro. He was the guy when Vaughn was drafted. You think, okay, after 2012, because Dumervil, that they had 2 years together. Miller's rookie campaign and that second year where Vaughn ended up with 18 sacks. Well, dude, Dumervil had 11 sacks that year. And then, of course, Faxgate, right? They didn't, that whole thing that went screwy for the Broncos. Dumervil, Zach, get this, just through the Super Bowl 15 season. So 2013 with the Ravens, he goes on 9.5 sacks. The year following, 2014, my dog, 17 sacks, first team All-Pro, Elvis Dumervil. And then 2015, even though he starts all 16 games, takes a little bit of a step back, only 6 sacks, still gets a Pro Bowl out of it. But that's another question. Who would have had a bigger impact on Vaughn? Do you still get to Super Bowl 50, Zach, if Elvis, because Vaughn had that 1 year in between without either of them. That was that big snafu season where he was trying to beat the NFL drug test, got busted, 6-game suspension, then the ACL. What was his? Sean Phillips was their number 1 pass rusher that year with Vaughn out of commission, basically. So what, in your opinion, do the Broncos get to Super Bowl 50 and win as they did if Elvis Dumervil remained a Bronco?
Oh man, it's the butterfly effect. It's the hypotheticals. I don't know. Probably they do because the defense was so dominant. It wasn't just the pass rush, Chad. It was also the secondary. It was also the linebacker play. The whole defense was very special. I agree with the comment. That would have been a lethal combination. We also never got to see Von Miller and Bradley Chubb together as the duo there. But like you said, at least we got to see DeMarcus Ware and Von. So good times.
Yep, just 1 year where they were both healthy, Vaughn and Chubb, and they totaled 26 sacks between them. It's like that's what the vision was, but the injury bug had different designs. But guys, such a phenomenal conversation tonight. We love you. We got a couple messages, though, then we're going to dip on out.
Another tremendous episode of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter at the MHH Pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle. You can follow Chad on Twitter at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every single podcast, check out mhhmerch.com. get you some. If you haven't done so yet, please drop us a like at facebook.com/mile-high-huddle-pod. You can find us on Instagram at mile_high_huddle. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your Football Priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some of that merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
That it does. And checking in as we're signing off is Howie Frickin' Day, one of our key figures of the community on Facebook. Great to see you tonight, big dog. Thank you for throwing down some stars. Sorry to say we got to dip on out, but it's so good to see you tonight. A mile high salute and a special shout out to the Super Chat superstars like Howie and supporters tonight, helping us keep the lights on. The Lady D throwing down big time 3 massive supers. We got the Duchess, Michaela Parker, throwing down 2 supers, one of which huge top rope. That's her style. She's one of the first faces etched on the MHH Mount Rushmore for a reason. The Papa Bear, David McElrath, the Ronk early on Facebook. Let's see. We got Taylor Christensen rocking his brand new Bo Nix jersey like a boss. And stay tuned, by the way, on that front, guys. We're going to be doing some just random Bo Nix jersey giveaways this week. So if you're not live with us during the week, you're going to miss out on that. Mike Edel, bro, so consistent. Thank you, man. Eric Flynn, appreciate you on Facebook, my dog. Tucson Phil. And then, of course, as we mentioned prior, Howie Frickin' Day. Much love and respect, guys. We'll see what's cooking tomorrow. It's going to be the 15th, so 2 more days till the rookies report, at least for training camp. Can you feel it? We're getting closer. It's going to be a gas, but we'll see you tomorrow night.
Getting closer and closer. Can't wait. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Take care, and as always, go Broncos.